Welcome back to our webinar series, A Business Leader's Guide to IT. In this installment, we're looking at data loss prevention and effective DLP practices for all sizes of businesses. So we've spoken previously about disaster recovery, backups, how to use the cloud to save your business in the event of a cyber incident. And oftentimes, small and medium business owners might conflate data loss prevention with something that relates to data backup. But DLP is a bit different to that, isn't it, Broden? Can you just give us a quick rundown on what DLP is?
Yeah, sure. So DLP is, broadly speaking, it's a set of tools and processes that you can use to ensure sensitive data kept by your organization isn't. So making sure it's not lost, accessed by unauthorized third parties, or misused in whatever way, perhaps by other management staff or anyone internal to the business, anything like that. Typically, there's in general there's three rough sort of use cases. I would say the first one is you're using DLP practices in order to make sure that you know how your users or your employees internal to the company, how they're using the data and what they're accessing and all that sort of stuff, making sure they don't access anything they're not authorized to. One of the other use cases is probably something around IP protection. So if you have some intellectual property that is, very, very valuable to your business, and should it be lost or leaked or whatever would cause, large amounts of financial damage to you, is another. You're looking to secure that data and make sure that only approved people can get access to that sort of thing, and it doesn't leak onto the marketplace or anything like that. And the other one is probably legislative compliance, I would say, is probably another use case for it. So that is something like, you're keeping financial payment details, you're keeping credit card details or health records, or it's called PII, personally identifiable information. Anything that's classified in that realm has a certain set of legislative steps you have to go through to make sure that you're compliant in keeping that data.
Sure. And a real example of how this can apply in your business is DLP software will prevent staff members from doing things like copying and pasting data or copying files to USB sticks, things like that, where you have, as Broden said, sensitive data, be this customer contact lists or sales information or that critical business IP that you need to protect. It'll stop them making copies of that into thumb drives and the like.
Yeah, and I would say a lot of the time we're engaged in situations like this where it's already too late. You've let an employee go. We try to avoid it whenever possible. And everyone who's in business knows that sometimes staff departures don't go particularly well, and there's a bit of animosity there. And fast forward a few weeks, it becomes evident to you through loss of clients or loss of other staff members that this person, whoever it is, has actually taken something from you that should have been protected. Now, a lot of the time, it is too late, but at least even if you've got some DLP software or monitoring on something internally that can prove it was taken, you're a lot further of the way down the track to recovering from that sort of damage to your business than you would be if you were doing nothing and you could never prove it. Really. Yeah,
it does open up a lot of legal options for you at that point if you've got the hard evidence through specific DLP solutions.
Yeah, so there is different methods that, when you're selecting a DLP product to implement at your business, there are ones that do everything, and there's ones that perform their task in a very specific way using a specific method. So, a lot of the time, the conversation when you engage with these sorts of companies, they'll be around, securing data at rest, using some sort of encryption technique on the data wherever it sits, wherever it is idly sitting, so that, in the event that it's ever transferred, it's in an encrypted format that can't be moved, that sort of thing. Others look at the way data moves. So some software looks at the idea of securing data as it's in transit, and that's probably more of analyzing network traffic and watching for encrypted data going over an unencrypted channel, for example. And that filters all the way down to something like, using a DLP add-on to an existing endpoint security product. So you've got antivirus running on each of the machines, and there are certain AV products that will allow you to add on like a DLP add-on, and they function in a variant, like a bunch of different ways, and you can have mixed results with them. We've seen people do that sort of stuff really well. Other stuff, it just doesn't. Other products just don't really sort of cut the mustard. But everything around selecting that sort of thing really should be done in conjunction with your IT partner.
Yeah, and that probably segues really nicely in relation to antivirus endpoint software and integrated solutions for DLP. It extends a level above as well to our next installment, which will be part 5 of the series. Spam is just the start of your business email security considerations.
Yeah, one thing, just before we go, one thing I always like to leave these sort of things with a recommendation, because it's easy to say all this stuff and throw all that information at you, and you get to the end of it and you sort of think, okay, but like, what are you actually telling me to do? So what I would say is there's some steps you can go through before you're even at the point where you're paying for a DLP solution, and this is the sort of thing that a business owner should do in any case. And they are things like classifying your data. So having a look at all of your data set and saying, okay, that's on a server here, that's in OneDrive, that's in G Suite, that's in this proprietary system that's a business line application that is a platform as a service, for example. Thinking about where all of the data is that you have and where it sits, and then putting into your head, okay, how am I going to classify that data? So what data is intellectual property related, and and what is the risk to my business should that be a subject of an unauthorized access, or you've lost it, or something like that. And then you can classify things in different ways. That's IP data, that's my client data, that's personally identifiable information, that's staff management data, that's medical data. All of that sort of thing you can be putting into your head as you're thinking about this sort of stuff, and thinking, okay, go to your IT partner right now and say, how are we protecting my business from data loss scenarios? How are we protecting myself right now? And figure out what that answer is, and if it's sufficient, that's good. If it's not, put a plan in place to protect the most important data, at least.
Yeah, and that's a really good point. The way we manage this for our clients in Clarity is that we build out an IT risk register, and we go through this process with them, because every DLP approach for every set of data is going to be different depending on the considerations and the risk profile.
Correct.
Those are really great insights. Thank you, Broden.
No worries.
You can join us next time for part 5, where we look at email security far beyond spam, and some really cool methods to protect your business from having threats get past that email security system. Thanks for your time, Broden.
Cheers, Drew.